Good morning. Hello, everyone. It's really great to see so many people who want to learn about learning. This is the subject of today, this session. I would like to introduce you Molly Nagler, who is Chief Learning Officer in PepsiCo. Molly is now responsible for strategy for learning in PepsiCo. And this is really crucial element in every organization when normal ways of learning by feedback loop, direct contact is broken. Now there is a new way to learn, and Molly will share with us her experiences in this field. And in the end of the session, you will be asked to introduce your questions and your remarks. So thank you again, Molly, for accepting our invitation. And yeah, please share with us your experience. You're welcome.
All right, thank you so much. It's so wonderful to be here. I wish we could be in person, reliving all the memories of the Top 500 Innovators program when I was at UC Berkeley, and I see that Ula Furman, my former colleague, has joined the room. So good to see you, Ula. And yeah, it's just really a pleasure to be with you. And I'm so glad that you're still getting together after all this time, and that you are value the connections that you made and the learning that you still have to do with each other. So I am indeed now Chief Learning Officer at PepsiCo. After I left Berkeley, I went to Yale School of Management. And so it's been really nice over the past couple of years at Pepsi to see the impact of learning over time, which is not something I was able to do at a university because all you very nice people, you come and then you leave, and I don't get to see you again and follow you day to day. So it's been wonderful to join a company and just lead the learning strategy there, and being able to bring in a lot of the practices that I used in previous roles to help skill up our workforce. So I'm joining you from North Haven, Connecticut, and the room that I now use as my office, which is my kids' old playroom. And I'm going to share some ideas with you today about learning as a tool for resilience. And I look forward to a discussion, and hope that you'll have questions and things for me at the end. So here we go. So the first thing I wanted to talk about is that the disruption that we're seeing right now isn't a short-term one. I mean, obviously COVID will come and go, we hope, but there's so much changing in the world above and beyond our response to the global pandemic that resilience is a life skill at this point. And so I think we should all think of it that way, and think about how we can cultivate it in the long term. So I wanted to start by talking about just some future of work trends. And here's one that I've seen COVID accelerate, but that I believe is here to stay because it was already in the works. So I believe that work environments are going to become more fluid, in the sense that we will be working on multiple projects within our roles. We won't necessarily be a part of the same team month after month and year after year. That once our skills become more visible, thanks to the various technology solutions that now exist in many workplaces to make it easy to kind of search the employee database, if you will, for who can do what. This is something that's emerging, that we'll be able to staff projects with the right mix of skill sets in a way that we haven't been able to do before. And so when you're moving in and out of a fluid project environment, you're going to be managing more relationships and stakeholders, and just balancing all that psychology of going into and out of dynamic teams. Our work identity right now is very much tied to our job title and the team, the manager we work for, and then maybe the people we manage. And so I think it's going to be just a little bit of a different scenario going forward. So that's one reason that we want to be resilient and agile as the work environment continues to change. The other thing we hear a lot about is the rise of artificial intelligence. And as scientists, I'm sure that you have a completely different lens on this than I do, and may know a lot more about where this technology is going. But what we do know is that artificial intelligence can outperform humans in many learning tasks. So we don't have to stuff as much into our brains when we have an AI bot to do the remembering for us. And so I've been, working with some professors and doing some reading on like what is then the uniquely human value add in the workplace. And this Professor George Siemens in Texas talks about sense making as a uniquely human skill and as a future skill that leaders and employees in general will have to do. And that's integrating and connecting information into coherent narratives for your team. And so in turn, sense making is, composite of different things. So you have to be able to go out into the world and, something that Steve Blank, Stanford professor, would talk about and do like, sensing out at the edges, right? So get those weak signals from the edges and bring them in and make sense of them. Help your teams understand what's happening. And when you're working with disparate, seemingly disconnected information, you need to really grapple with that as a team. And so you need trust to do that. You have to make people comfortable with the unknown, comfortable with conjecture, the sort of just divergent thinking that is really required for innovation. And as I mentioned before, if we're in temporary project-based relationships, you're going to need to build trust really quickly. So I think that's going to be an increasingly important skill going forward. Creating psychological safety, a buzzword these days, but it's very, very important so that people can learn from failure and feel safe to take risks. So I expect to hear more about sense making going forward as a core human skill. And finally, this is something an idea that I have built on from Stanford. I know many of you have spent your top 500 innovators experience at Stanford, and they're doing some very interesting work. They did this a few years ago on something they called open loop learning. And this is a fake advertisement that they created as part of their project to describe what they see as the future of higher education at Stanford. So this doesn't actually exist. It's just a scenario planning, basically futurism exercise that they did a few years ago. And the idea is that, why do we sequester learning into the ages of 18 to 22 or 18 to 26 or 28, depending on your graduate degree plan? When, we don't necessarily know what our interests are going to be or what our future career might hold, and we might need different skills, later in life than we anticipated. And so Stanford came up with this idea that when you're admitted to the university, you get 6 years of learning, of education to use whenever you want. You can pack it all in at the same time, starting at age 18, or you can loop in and out of Stanford and going out to work and coming back. So this is this fake ad is talking about, I looped out after 2 years at Stanford to observe and reflect on the role of nonviolent communication in international policy. After my time in Tibet and at the UN, what I was studying at Stanford made sense. So the idea is that education is a partner with you along your life and career journey, and that they can be intertwined and mixed in ways that right now universities really aren't set up to do and are conceived. And so the from to here, as I see, like, from these careers, which of course are getting chunked up. Used to be that we would spend maybe 30 years or our entire career at one company, and now that's much less common. You're spending 2-5 years and moving around. To what's I think a more integrated open loop employment where you're just by design, going in and out of different roles and in and out of education, and less of a linear approach. So if this comes to pass, and it is again building on this trend of shorter career chunks anyway, so I think it could happen, then this sort of the resilience that I'll be talking about in a second is also very valuable. So those are three future of work trends that have been very interesting to me, and that I like to think about how they might apply at PepsiCo. So now let's talk about learning and resilience. And so we've all been thrust into this online environment where we can't get together as much in person. I know Peter Fisk just spoke to you about how researchers will interact in person in the future, and maybe they'll come together not to hear lectures, but instead to do relationship building activities like going on a walk or a canoe ride. And so it's a really nice time to think about how to spend your learning time, what you want to learn, and how you're going to go about it. So resilience is something that people talk about a lot, and at least when I think of it traditionally, you think about individual fortitude, sort of grit, or the mindfulness and like yoga practice and things that you're really investing in yourself to let things roll off your back, or be able to like maintain the stamina and strength to conquer all the challenges in your path. But some work being done out of Harvard's National Preparedness Leadership Initiative, which looks mainly at crisis situations, but I think this applies in regular life as well, is that it's the direction doesn't go, you have a group of individuals who are resilient and that makes the group resilient. It's the other direction. So if your team is resilient, if your family is resilient, then you become stronger as an individual. So I think like changing our conception of that and our framing will help us, all become more resilient. So think we, not me, when you're thinking about resilience. And then in Harvard Business Review, there's an interesting article from several years ago, actually, on the 4 qualities of resilient teams. So let's go through them here one by one. So this is a mindset, right? They believe they can effectively complete tasks together beyond each individual having confidence in his or her ability. They collectively believe that they can effectively complete tasks. So that's one quality or behavior. They share a common mental model of teamwork. So I understand my role and you understand my role in the same way I do. We understand how we're codependent, like what the dependencies that exist in the team, how we're supposed to interact. And especially in times of uncertainty, having this sort of mental model gives us like the strong foundation to adapt to changing situations. So like if the external environment changes, but we have a strong mental model of our team, then we're able to flex and not waste time on sort of the norming, storming, forming stages of team building. Next, teams are able to improvise. So this is very important, again, as external stimuli change, develop new ideas and ways of handling adversity. So that's number 3. And then number 4, this again, going back to the trust in teams, psychological safety. And so team resilience is enhanced when members share the belief that it's safe to take interpersonal risks in their team. So these are things that they're, of course, like composite skills, right? Or behaviors. Like there's lots of things underneath these. So these are a few ideas where if you want to build resilience, that learning together and spending time together with your team can help you do that. So one idea would be to have, in your next team meeting, have a reflection exercise when you think about a time when you accomplished something together. And that's building that sense of efficacy, team efficacy, which would then, according to this Harvard Center, the team efficacy and the team resilience leads to the individual resilience. So you want to remind yourselves that you are doing good work together, that you are able to complete, tasks and achieve goals. Think deliberately about these successes as building blocks of resilience and celebrate them as such. So just don't, tell yourselves, remind yourselves, use these words so that you're constantly thinking in this way. Another idea is to develop a team charter, and there's plenty of models out there about this. But again, this came from this center at Harvard, which is, define what a resilient accounting team is, if that's what you're in. Just define what a resilient lab looks like. Do you have, if someone's out sick, is there a backup, right? So actually lay these things out on how your team is going to handle disruption, and then act on it and make sure that you're resourced accordingly. So one of the biases that groups have, and it's hard to avoid, is overconfidence and groupthink. So as much as we want our team to have a strong sense of efficacy and the belief that we can accomplish things together, you don't want to become overconfident. So this is a learning opportunity to look into these sorts of cognitive biases and how to avoid them. Another tool is an after-action review. This is something that originated in the military, and it's a way of analyzing performance on a project, an experiment, a study, and understanding what went well, what didn't go well, and what you should change for next time. So it's a nice framework, and there's plenty of them out there. Again, if you just search it up on the internet, that you can use in your team. And the most effective ways of doing this is not to wait until the end of the project, is to do them little by little as you go through, because if you do it at the very end, you no longer can course correct. You can course correct the next time you do something like this, but you want to get more benefit from that and do it along the way. And think of this as always forward looking, so that you want to see yourself as bouncing through adversity and getting to the next step, not really ruminating on the past. And then finally, drop the hero mentality. So it's not your job to carry the weight of the entire team, your entire family. You're a system, and you need to work well together. Everyone has a role. And so you're really trying to invest in the success of the group, which will then lead to successful individuals. So I wanted to talk about teams first, again, because of the causality that strong teams make strong individuals. But of course, we want to learn about personal resilience as well. It's not that you don't need it. It's just that we don't want to neglect the team aspect of it. So there's a little quiz on mindtools.com that we have in our learning platform at PepsiCo, and anyone can go use it. It's just a way to think about your own level of personal resilience. And there's 16 questions. Most of them deal with mindset. And again, this isn't something that you can necessarily read an article about and then get better. It's like these are practices, right? And these are things that you have to change over time. So when given a new task, I'm confident that I'll succeed. I feel positive about the future. I have strong goals that are clear in my mind. The next grouping here is about behaviors. So what do you do when something goes wrong? When one attempt fails, I learn from it and change my approach next time. I have strategies in place for dealing with stress. I am more likely to say yes than no. Okay, so obviously in the tool, it'll kind of rate your responses and give you an estimate of how resilient you are. But so this is just another helpful framework where you're thinking about mindset, behavior, and then finally relationships, harkening back to the team model here. So I have few people at work who I can speak to about issues in the office. You'd want to have obviously you'd want to say I have more people. You want to find it easy to ask colleagues for help. You want to ask for assistance. You don't want to have a mindset that doing so reveals any weakness. So, a lot of engagement surveys as well at work will target things like I have a best friend at work. So it's well known that the solidarity and the relationships of the workplace are really what drive job satisfaction and success. So that's my thoughts on resilience. I wanted to end before we can go to questions and another discussion with this behavioral science concept called the fresh start effect. So Katie Milkman is a professor at the Wharton School of Business, And she's one of a group of people who have coined the term the fresh start effect. The idea is that there are landmarks in our lives. They can be birthdays, maybe the holidays, the new year, where they're sort of arbitrary, but they create in our minds the idea that I'm starting anew, that one chapter has ended and the other is beginning. And it induces us to take, as she says here, a big picture view of our lives and motivate aspirational behaviors. So like with the holidays coming up, I encourage you to think, to use, don't let this opportunity pass, to think about, what might be next for you, how you can start a new habit. It doesn't have to be a New Year's resolution per se, just use the opportunity to rethink. And even, at the end of this conference, right? I know you're going to be together tomorrow. You're learning a lot. You're reconnecting with old friends, I hope. Think of the day after the conference as your fresh start. Like, how are you going to learn, or how are you going to apply what you've been learning here? So I just think that's, it's fun. Anyone can use it. It's a way to sort of hack your psychology and try to get yourself into some new habits. So that's, my formal remarks. Would love to hear your reactions, talk about anything that you'd like here for the rest of the time together. And you can either type things into the chat, or you can, I guess in the chat, there's a button that says take the mic on the left. And so you can, oh, I see Peter Fisk is in here. You can do that as well.
Oh, there is a question. Can you see, Molly, the question from Peter?
No.
Okay, so I will read it. What do you think won't change for Pepsi or for employment in general after COVID? What would be the same as it is now?
That's a good question. Our strategy hasn't changed. Like the value that we add in the marketplace, our mission, which is more smiles with every sip and every bite, and our goal to be the leading food and beverage, leader in convenient foods and beverages by winning with purpose. So we have huge sustainability goals. We have social justice goals about representation of Black associates and Hispanic associates. So none of that has changed. What's changing is just the way we work together in an online environment to accomplish those goals. And we are still going to have offices. This is not going to be a location-free work environment. We're just going to be more purposeful about how and when we come together. So you're not going to go to the office to do your emails. You'll do that at home, and you'll come in to see each other. And as someone who lives 57 miles from the office, I'm really psyched about that.
Great. Thank you, Molly.
Good to see you, Peter.
Good to see you, Molly. I have to say, this has been such a heartwarming experience. I've stayed on, I've got my own annual meeting that's starting soon, but I'm like, A, I miss you guys so much. B, you guys have taught me stuff. Even the last hour and a half, I am so grateful. And maybe this is a great testimony to the top 500 experience we had, Molly, was that, you can keep deriving value from your friends. And I'm just so delighted to see you and to learn from you. So thank you for being my teacher.
Oh my gosh. No, it's so good. It's good to see you. And yeah, it was a wonderful experience. So it's great. I'm just so happy that you all get together again. And that's a sign of a healthy learning culture, is that you keep coming back together.
Another question. Would it be possible for you suggest some decision-making methodologies that can be helpful once driving the digital transformation within the group of SMEs? Do you think DACE is a solution? it's a question from Slava Rubinstein. I don't know the DACE. Maybe there will be an explanation about this.
Tell me what that is.
Yeah,
well, go ahead.
You can see these questions when you click comments on right-hand side of your right upper corner. There is a comments field.
Oh, I see it.
And button, and there is the questions there you will find. And so DACE is driver approver contribution informed. Contributors. Informed.
Yes, the race. I think that is we over here. It's RACI. So digital. No, I don't think that changes. So what that is it's very helpful role assignments in a decision for who's the decision maker, who's consulted, who's informed, and then there's one other category. But I think in any big, complicated organization, it's super important to be clear about that. I mean, in every job I've had, decision rights are the hardest thing and the thing that caused the most delays and confusion. And if you can get it straight, like I can align anyone. I mean, in theory, if I know who they are and I know, what their interests are and why they're a stakeholder. So that's not going to change. I think it's incredibly important. And really the first thing you should do in any big project is for people to understand what their role is. And so you don't have people weighing in when that's not their place, and you don't have people overlooked, and everyone gets aligned to that. They might not like it, but it's important to be clear about it and have a good rationale. So especially for things like digital transformation, which are just massive, sprawling, confusing, future-looking, brand new type projects, it's really important because you may not have like the established relationships, your established team where that's second nature to know who to go to. So I think being explicit about roles, responsibilities, and decision rights is never going to go out of style. Very important.
Okay. I have another question because it's interesting for me how to measure the learning process, how to measure the success of learning strategy. What are your experiences in this field?
Yes. So there's a kind of a hierarchy of things, of outcomes that you can measure. Everything from at the very bottom, learner satisfaction, to return on investment from the learning program. And all organizations do the bottom, like these are called smile sheets. We did these in Top 500, I'm sure, where we asked you to, how was Peter Fisk in this lecture? Was he clear? Did he make you laugh? And of course he did. He was always amazing. But so that helps the learning designer, to staff programs and make tweaks, but it doesn't show what impact the learning intervention had on someone's career. And so you have to do more longitudinal measures there, and that usually falls apart because it's not clear whose job it is. Is it the education provider, or is it the learner, or is it the learner's boss? So at PepsiCo, we have a strategy for this where we're going to benchmark our satisfaction and engagement scores against like a larger pool across industries and companies. So at least we know, if our programs are, of like quality is perceived by our own employees, then we're going to look at behavior change. And so that's going to be at 3, 6, 9 months, and then even longer, saying like, what did you apply? What are you doing differently? Ask the manager, are you seeing any difference? And then even farther out, you want to look at career outcomes, and are they getting promoted at a faster clip or a regular clip? So what we're not doing is looking at specific return on investment. Like if I spend $100,000 on a learning program, did I get $100,000 back? Did I get $200,000 back? Did I get less? That's just like a bridge too far. What we're looking more for is like individual, stories of impact here and there in targeted areas. Like, did the targeted population change their behavior? That sort of thing. I think you should also not neglect the learning culture. So are people rewarded for learning? And I don't mean monetarily, but like, is it applauded, when people learn? Another aspect of learning culture is people feel comfortable asking questions in meetings and speaking up. So these are things that like don't even necessarily have to do with formal learning, but it's more about how inquisitive, how safe is your company for new ideas. And then activity metrics, like how many seats, how many people are taking programs, how many eyeballs are on this content. I think that's not a proxy for impact, but it's on the critical path, right? Like you can't have learning impact if no one's learning. So you need to sort that and see like what skills are people looking at, what's popular, and then learn from that and learn to adjust your portfolio accordingly.
Okay, thank you. And there's another question. How is learning necessity influencing people's relations in the company? Any differences in any areas?
Okay, how is I'm not sure I understand that.
I understand that if people need, if there is a need of learning, is it related to atmosphere in the group, in the company? I think this how the relationship in the group is influencing the need to learn, the eager for learn new things.
Yeah, and then Peter's saying maybe does it build loyalty or does it enhance the potential for them to leave? So our employees, and this is increasingly so, expect their employer to develop them. Like they're here for a shorter and shorter amount of time, at their choice often, and they expect to be ready for their next career move because of PepsiCo. And we're competing in a talent marketplace that our competitors, our peer companies are providing a lot of these opportunities. So, does it make someone more likely to stay if you train them? I mean, it sure makes them happier, a more valuable employee. So we don't think of it as like, does it trigger turnover or does it trigger loyalty? It's like, does it trigger better performance and engagement while they're here? And it's okay if they leave. If they learn something that awakens them to a new career interest. That's, I think we're past the point, like most companies are, of worrying about that. There are transient relationships on both sides here, and so you want to invest while they're here, and building networks and having strong relationships at work really drives job satisfaction. So if that makes them stay because they're happier, then that's great, and learning can contribute to that.
Okay. There's another comment.
Yeah, I can actually see them now.
Okay.
Yeah,
Good.
so you can you can relax. I can.
Good.
All right. So is learning an individual thing, a group effort? So both, obviously. Do you suggest using the reach, impact, confidence, effort for the products? Okay, I'm not familiar with that model. So the way that we think of learning priorities is you always want to start with the business strategy, and you want to say, okay, what are we trying to achieve as a company? What are the human capital gaps that might prevent us from getting there? And then how do we close those gaps? And learning is one of those solutions. It's not the only one. You might need a hiring agenda rather than a learning agenda, right? I mean, maybe you can't turn that truck driver into a data scientist in enough time in order to meet that. So you may just need to hire. And so it's really up to the leadership of the company to determine what the capabilities are that we need. And then that's when learning can come in and say, like, all right, these capabilities make up these 7 different skill sets. And now we can build a learning agenda to those, everything from, online to in person based on what learning objectives that you're trying to achieve. And then it's up to each manager to kind of be in tune with the talent on their team and understand where people need to develop. And then it's my job as chief learning officer to make zero barriers to that learning. There's always a seat in the program. There's always an easy way to access the content.
Okay. So everyone is welcome to grab the mic with the button on the left from the chat.
So I think one thing I'll share is we have a large research and development team at PepsiCo who's trying out new flavors and new products, and they're absolutely essential. And they are by far the most avid learners in the company. So, I wish that I could bottle them up, like that essence, that learning enthusiasm, and dose it out to everyone else in the company, because they just are like insatiable learners. They have the biggest portfolio. They have the biggest part of my team is dedicated to their learning agenda, supporting that. They create content. They don't just consume it. They love to do webinars. They love to share their expertise. So, it's something about the culture, the science culture, that makes learning just a job requirement. I'd love to hear from anyone like tips of how to spread that culture to other industries.
Okay.
Scientists love to learn. Yep.
That could be true.
Yeah. So Peter's saying, let them teach. I mean, yeah, people love to share their expertise, and that is another important thing at your company. Think about learning as a platform for voices that might not get heard otherwise. Leaders with titular leadership roles, they have a platform to get their ideas out, but there are lots of smart people in your company without the same platform, and you can bring them into learning programs, leadership programs, anything to tell their stories and talk about their successes. And that's it's an honor. It's good for their development in terms of public speaking or distilling their ideas into teachable nuggets. It's also a way to contribute to, I think, diversity and inclusion and sort of the voices that get heard in the company. If you can think of yourselves as a talent scout and use that platform for good. Yeah, people feel busy, so telling them they have permission to use some time to learn. I think permission is a very undervalued thing, like need, and even I think you see this with companies that have unlimited vacation and nobody takes their vacation, because sometimes you have to have permission for a confined set of to use it. Otherwise you feel like you're not sure what you're entitled to or what the social norm is. So whereas I don't think reserving like specific times of day to learn works, because just they get scheduled over. We're part of these like spider webs of responsibilities that we don't control our time. I mean, even senior people don't control their time as much as you might think. So that having in general permission and encouragement to learn rather than an assignment of a learning slot, I think is more effective. And this has been shown in a study that Google did on incentivizing people to exercise, where they paid people to exercise. And one group they paid if they went in an assigned time slot, and another group they paid if they went in any time slot. And what they found was that if someone missed their time, people who were in the group that were paid for this time slot, if they missed the time slot, they didn't exercise at all, even though exercise is good for them regardless of whether they get paid or not. So it was like this funny thing where it's like, if I miss the assigned window, I'm just not going to do it. Versus if like I know it's a good idea and I'm incentivized to do it, and I'll just do it when it works for me. So I thought that was really interesting, and maybe applications to learning there as well.
So the permission is more about culture, or it's how do you define the permission?
I think it can be explicit in the sense of let's see. It's culture, it's role modeling. So, when I read an article as a leader, or I make sure that I note that in our learning management system, and that people can see that I'm spending time learning, and so they feel like they have permission. So I think a lot of permission is role modeling from the leader. Like, just like if your manager never takes vacation, you feel like it's not okay for you to take vacation, and even though you have vacation. Maybe that's uniquely American. Europeans have a much healthier approach to their leisure than we do. So congrats. That's another thing I'd like to port over here, if you can help me out with that.
Okay. Yeah, with this role of learning by example, yeah? Learning
yes.
by leader who is doing this, that's
yes.
That's the strongest argument.
That's right. One of our leaders, my boss, sent out, who manages like a huge chunk of the organization, sent out an email yesterday saying how to make remote working work for you. And it's all about, it's okay to, have distractions in your home life and your dog is barking in the meeting. It's okay to not spend all the time you're saving from your commute working. Like, it's okay to set boundaries around your workday so that you start and end at a certain time, even though you're just like walking from your living room back to your home office. So repeating those sorts of messages is really important. You kind of think like, well, they know that. I mean, but there's something about having the leader say it. And then here's a question about Google's new policy about meeting-free weeks. This only works if you have a contained set of people who can schedule meetings that you need to be in. Like, if I were in a tiny company that was self-contained and we could all agree that we're taking Fridays off, then that's great. But if you were in a company where you're in these like webs of projects, and you just can't find a time where everyone will agree that you're not going to have a meeting. And then what happens is you say, well, no, forget it, no meetings. And then you have shadow meetings, and people just don't put them on their calendar because they're just trying to get their work done in the way that works best for them. So unfortunately, I don't think strict policies about meeting free times work. What I do think is the permission of saying like, hey, as a leader, I'm going to, I reserved my Friday morning last week without meetings, and it really helped me focus. And so I encourage you to find time that works for you to do that. So you have permission to not spend all your time in meetings, but I'm not going to tell you that you can't have a meeting.
Okay. Great. So thank you very much. I think we will have many, many more questions, but the time is running out. So thank you very much for your thoughts, for your experiences. Yeah, it's really impressive, the relation between team capabilities and even individual. Yeah, in case of resilience. Yeah, that's something that I will take with me, and also this permission by giving example by the boss. Yeah, who is the leader, who is the change which he wants to do. Yeah, that's really important, I think. So great, thank you very much, Molly, again, and I invite all people to join networking session now, and thank you all participants for being with us. And Molly, would you like to add something for the finish?
Just remember that fresh start effect. Like, any day can be a fresh start. When this conference ends, find a buddy that attended this and like agree that you're going to meet once a week and talk about how you're applying what you learned, and just make yourselves accountable in a fun way for it, and get that fresh start and close that gap between your intentions and your actions.
Okay, so there should be some strong point for fresh start. So we can do now a group photo of all of us. So here we set a special function in this platform to create a photo of all participants with Molly. You just need to click take a selfie, and then the system will generate a great photo of all of us to have the amulet, or how to say it, Okay,
Can't
now
wait to see this.
each one should do selfie, and when there will be enough selfies in the system, we will close the session of selfies and show you the effect, which is autonomously done. And in the meantime, I would like to invite all participants for tomorrow. There will be next very, very interesting sessions. This day today was more about leadership, about managing. Tomorrow is more subject focused, so there will be sessions regarding artificial intelligence, about intellectual property, and many other interesting sessions. So you're more than welcome to join us tomorrow. Yeah. So now prepare for the networking. If you join the session, there the system will connect you with other peers randomly, and you can find new relationships, new partners for your collaboration. And now, yes, you can see the photo. You can put it somewhere where you will see it every day morning, and every day morning you will have the fresh start, which is so important to make a change to get the maximum of your learning experience. Great. So thank you again very much, and all the best for you, Molly. It was great to hear you, to see you, and we will stay in touch. Bye.
Thanks, everybody.